All right, what's up, guys? This is Demkeys, and this is going to be another random dev vlog. This is dev vlog number 3, and it is currently. Oh, let me get out of the OBS thing. Okay, so it is currently the 14th of October, 2021. I'm recording this vlog during a busy time of the day, so excuse any background noise that you may hear. I'm also going to try not to do the and sounds that I do, but I'm not making any promises because I don't really control that. It just happens. Okay, that being said, let's get right into this. So since the last vlog, I've made a lot of progress. For a little bit, there's the again. Oops. Okay, so since the last vlog, I've made a lot of progress. I'd been stuck for I think about a week. I'd been stuck on this section. So this is a buffer. The buffer contains data for it contains geometry data, animation data, skinning data, and some other data as well. I can't remember what exactly, but there's a bunch of data in this one big binary blob, and you then use buffer views to basically divide this buffer, this one big buffer, into smaller chunks of data. Up until that point, it's still a bunch of bytes. The buffer is one big byte array, and once you divide it into chunks using the buffer views, those chunks are also byte arrays. So you need to then use accessors, which are here. That is this section. The accessors tell you how to extract data from the buffer views. Well, really you're extracting it from the buffer, but you get the point. The buffer is one big blob of data. The buffer views divide the buffer into chunks, and then you use accessors to actually extract information, extract data from the buffer views, extract meaningful data. So the data could be vector3, it could be a float, could be a byte, an int, stuff like that. Okay, so the reason I'd been stuck on this was because I'd made some errors in calculating some of the offsets when I was reading from the buffer, and so I wasn't getting accurate vertex position values. I was getting the wrong values basically. And once I figured out my mistake, I fixed that mistake, and then I was able to read the data properly. So once I was sure that I was able to extract the data properly, the right information, I guess I should say, then I started working on the actual importing. Now this is where things got kind of interesting. I didn't really plan on writing an actual importer. My What I was building was kind of an importer in the sense that you would specify a file path in the script, and it would read the file from within the code. It would read the file at that path, and then it would get data from it and process it in whatever way it has to, and then it would generate a mesh from that processed data and create a game object on in the scene. I later on changed my mind. I decided to write an actual importer in the sense something that will let you something that will generate an asset out of whatever you are importing into the project. So that way you can then drag and drop that asset into the scene, kind of like how you import an FBX file into your project. You just drag and drop the file, and then Unity's own FBX importer creates whatever it has to, and presents you with, at the very least, it presents you with an asset, which is your 3D model, and then you can drag and drop that asset into your scene. So I wanted to create something like that. And so I did some research on scripted importers, which is here. So scripted importers are a way for users to create their own custom importers so that you can import mainly for importing file formats that aren't currently supported by Unity, or file formats that don't currently have a native importer in Unity. You can use the scripted importer to create importers for those file formats. And Unity out of the box doesn't currently support glTF. So I decided to write one. There are glTF importers out there. If you are looking for a glTF importer, you can definitely find them. Ones that are specific to Unity, you can definitely find them, and they are proper full implementations. Mine is mainly for studying purposes because I'm trying to learn how this format works. And I'm also going to upload it to GitHub for anyone else who wants to use it and study it or whatever. If it helps someone, then, great. But for the time being, I'm mainly doing this so that I can learn how this format works. And I kind of forgot what I was trying to say. Okay, yeah, I've been writing this importer. It does have some limitations. I'm not going to go into details. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what the limitations are, but it does have some limitations compared to the native importer. So I had to kind of work around that. Because of these limitations, I'm probably gonna have to write two importers. One is gonna be an importer that generates one mesh asset out of the file, out of the glTF file. So it's going to read the very first mesh that is exported. So the disadvantage there, the advantage is obviously, you can import one mesh. The disadvantage is if you export multiple meshes in the glTF file, it's still only going to read the first mesh and only going to process the data of the first mesh. So that's going to be the first type of importer that I plan to write. The second type of importer is going to actually import all of the meshes. But because of the way that the scripted importer is designed and the way that it works, you cannot create multiple assets out of one scripted importer. Like when one asset is being imported, you cannot have it generate multiple assets out of that. And so the result of that is, let me just show you. So this is, okay, so this is the scripted importer. The extension that it's expecting is ABC, so file.abc, basically. So in this case, it is test1.abc. And after it's imported, I've written some code. I'll show the code over here. I'll go over this code after I've explained this. But if I want to have multiple game objects within this, if I want to have like multiple meshes that you can drag and drop into the scene, I have to make them, I've not exactly child assets. I was gonna say I have to make them as child assets or child objects, but like not child assets, not child objects. It's kind of a child, like a parent-child relationship in the asset, in that you have this kind of thing. So it's still like within this asset. And then you can drag and drop it. You can either drag and drop this. So this is one game object, or you can drag and drop, just a minute, or you can drag and drop this, which is a child within this asset, and that's a different game object. So like if you want to have multiple meshes, multiple objects within the same asset, then you have to use this method. And that's because of one of the limitations of the scripted importer. So what I plan to do is the first the first scripted importer that I'm going to write, the first glTF importer, or let's say the first version, the first type of glTF importer that I'm going to write is going to be for importing a single mesh. So regardless of how many meshes have been or how many nodes exist in, because each object, I shouldn't say mesh, they're nodes. Each of the objects that are being exported, they are called nodes in the glTF file format. So regardless of how many nodes exist in the file, I'm still only gonna process the data of the first node and build a mesh and an entire game object out of only that node. And then the second type that I'm gonna write maybe at some point in the future is gonna have it's gonna generate multiple objects out of the various nodes that are there. But the very first object is going to be the parent asset, and then the others are going to be child assets that are under that parent asset. That's a very it's a weird way of going about it, but I kind of have to work around the limitations of the scripted importer. There are other ways to do it, but I don't know. It seems like a little more trouble than it's worth, that I'm especially considering that I'm just doing this for learning. So I don't know. Maybe I'll look into the multiple assets thing. For now, I'm mainly focused on the single asset. I just want to finish that. Okay, so scripted importers are great, by the way. I mean, I love the fact that you can actually write your own importer, especially if people have their own file format defined for whatever they're working on, and they need to process whatever data they're importing in a way that is separate from how Unity processes various assets that are imported. Then they can write their own importer. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm creating a cube game object, and that becomes the main game object. I'm also reading various information from it, like because I'm instantiating a or creating a primitive cube. So it's gonna the primitive cube game object has a mesh filter, a mesh renderer, maybe a box collider as well, and of course the transform component. So then what I'm doing is I'm reading the mesh data from that mesh filter and trying to do some other stuff with another game object. All of that you can see over here. I'm also trying to create a material. Now, this is where I wish there was a little more documentation on scripted importers, because it took me quite a bit of experimenting to figure out how I can get certain assets to show up in the list. Because getting a game object to show up in the list is different from getting a material to show up in the list. Um, I don't know if I can explain that further right now, but there's certain stuff that I had to do in order to make sure that a material shows up in the list. There's also certain things that you have to take care of. You have to take care of destroying certain, I don't know if I should call them resources, if you are not actually adding them to the context. The context in this case is it's this asset. So if you want to add an object to it, for example, this game object, you have to add it to the context, or rather, okay, no, I don't think I should call this the context, because this is the asset. Um, Using the context, you can add objects to this asset that's being created. The context is over here. So using this, you can add objects. You can also set what the main object is, which is how I've set the cube to be the main. Wait, how long have I been recording this? I think I've been going on for a bit. What is the time there? 15 minutes already. Oh damn. Okay. So I'll try to speed this up. So yeah, I'm not gonna explain this further. It's I've been learning how to write the scripted importer, and using this, I'm gonna be writing an importer for the glTF file format as well. Before that, I wanted to successfully generate a mesh out of glTF data or glTF data, yeah, out of glTF data. So I decided to do it in a mono behavior first, just to make sure my logic was correct before I try to do it in a scripted importer. Because if my logic ends up being wrong while generating the mesh, I won't know whether I'm doing something wrong in the mesh generation logic or in the scripted importer logic. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, I've been reading up on how to generate meshes. I've done mesh generation in the past, but mainly simple mesh generation, and most of it was from scratch. And I've never actually worked with submeshes. So in this case, I had to look into submeshes as well. Submeshes, for those of you who don't know, are Unity's way of handling when when a mesh has multiple materials. So when certain faces on a mesh belong to or correspond to one material and certain faces correspond to another material, then you're basically going to have multiple materials in the mesh renderer. And the way that Unity handles this is through submeshes. So they're still part of the same mesh, but there are submeshes, and each submesh corresponds to a different material. So I needed to figure out the logic. I needed to figure out how to actually generate a mesh by reading. I had to figure out how to generate a mesh with submesh data, because how else am I going to handle situations where a model is using more than one material, or where a 3D model is using more than one material. So yeah, for the past few days I've been working on figuring out all that logic, and just like a day or two ago, I finally figured it out. I think I can show you an example here. Okay, yeah, I just need to run. By the way, I don't think I showed in the video how this asset is being imported, like what happens when you import the asset. So I'm going to delete this asset and go to this. So this is a file called test1.abc, and I'm going to drag and drop it here. And as you can see, once I drag and drop it, the scripted importer takes over and generates whatever assets need to be generated, which in this case is a main game object, which is a primitive cube, and another game object, which is a primitive sphere. I think it's a primitive sphere. I don't remember. Let me just look at the code. Yeah, the child game object is a primitive sphere, and it also generates a material that is going to be used by this cube game object. You can see that over here. Okay, so let me just enter play mode. So it's going to generate the asset, and I can show you the mesh with two materials on it. Oh damn. Okay. Oh, just a minute. That's my bad. This is definitely going to be left in the video. I'm not going to be cutting any of this because these vlogs are supposed to be raw. This was my mistake. I had added return over here because this is supposed to be a test function. So whenever I'm done testing, I just add return there instead of commenting the code. Okay, so let this do its thing, and then I'll hit play. Okay, that was a bit of a long gap. All right, so as you can see here, wait, are there multiple colors going on? I'm not sure. Yeah, well, there are multiple materials, and that's what I was trying to show you. So there are multiple materials over here, and this mesh is using multiple materials. Each of the materials is supposed to have a different color. I'm not sure why they both have the same color. Let me take a look at the material. Yeah, it's each of them is supposed to have. You know what? Let's try it again. Okay, yeah, this is a better example. I can also remove the texture. So just to show you better, I can remove the texture and wow, this is okay. You guys will have to excuse me. I didn't intend for it to take this long to show you this. But yeah, these are supposed to be raw vlogs, so I'm probably not going to be cutting any of this out. Okay, so this is the mesh, and as you can see, three of the faces have a different color, and they have a different material, and three of the faces have another material. And you can also see those two materials over here. So yeah, that's what I've been trying to do. This is where the concept of submeshes comes in, and this is how I'm going to handle situations where one mesh has multiple materials attached to it. So that's the logic that I'd been working on, and now I'm working on reading the data from a specific glTF file and generating an actual mesh from the data read from the glTF file. So up until this point, I've just been generating stuff like cubes and spheres and mesh data that I can pull from primitive objects. But now I want to actually pull it from the glTF file, and I've made quite a bit of progress here. There isn't much to show over here. I guess the most that I can show you is a game object being created, but there's no mesh that's going to be created because I haven't written that code yet. I haven't created that logic yet. You can see here it's just returning an empty mesh. So I mean I'll show it to you anyways. I'm still working on that logic. I'm probably going to show that off in the next vlog. And probably by the next vlog, the importer is also going to be done. Okay, so where is the object? I think it's this one. Is this the one? No, this is the one. It says cube.005. That's the name of the game object. That's also the name of the mesh. And I believe I'm assigning two materials here as well because the the asset that I exported, I purposely exported it with two materials so that I can actually, use it here. I can show you in this file is called Untitled 15. Here I can show you, yeah, here's the node. There's only one object exported in this file, and that object is called cube.005. And I believe the material is also named cube.005. Let me just confirm that. Where are the materials? No, no. Okay, the material is not called that. But I am reading the material name properly. So the material is also named. It's named exactly what it's uh, being exported as. I'm gonna have to handle generation of the materials, the mesh, and probably a couple of other things. I might not be able to automatically attach textures because textures can quite often be um, separate files. Though glTF does allow you to embed texture data within the same file, and if that happens to be the case, then I'll look into adding the feature to, well, no. At some point in the future, I might add the feature where if there happens to be some embedded glTF, no, some embedded texture data, then it'll generate a texture out of that and attach that to whatever material it needs to be attached to. But um, otherwise, I don't know if it's shown over here. I don't think this one has it. But if you do, if your materials do reference some kind of texture, if they do actually require a texture, then there will be a separate section in this glTF data called, I think it's called images. I think it's called images, and in that you're gonna find you're either gonna find a link to the you're either gonna find the path to the file, which in if the file is external, it's not embedded within this file, then you're gonna find a path. Or you're going to find, if it's embedded within this file, I'm guessing you're going to find another blob of data. Don't quote me on that. I don't remember exactly. I looked into it a while back. But yeah, there is a way to embed it. And if it is embedded, then I'll in the future I'll add a feature to check if it's embedded, and if it's embedded, then I'll create a texture. But for the time being, whoever is importing the model is going to have to assign the textures manually, because I cannot um actually, yeah, it's going to be a bit complicated. I have to look into how I would go about reading textures, not reading textures, but importing textures along with the asset. I guess that's a better way to put it. How long have I been recording? Dude, I don't want these to be really long, and they usually end up becoming long. This one is even longer than the previous vlog. So I'm going to try to keep it below 30 minutes at the very least. So this is what I've been working on so far. Um, hopefully I haven't done a whole lot of and I mean, I did quite a bit, but I think I kept it to a minimum, at least not as much as I did, in the previous vlog. But yeah, that's what I've been busy with. That's what I've been busy working on. And I'm getting really close to finishing this. Once again, I'm going to be releasing this on GitHub. I just want to mention this. I am releasing it for the community. People who wanna use it for their own purposes can do so. People who just want to study it can do so. You're free to do whatever you want with it. But keep in mind, you can probably find a better implementation of a glTF importer than the one that I'm making, because there are people out there who have made full importers, like full implementations of the glTF importer, and some of them have actually made a full implementation of an exporter as well. So you can probably find a proper fully implemented glTF importer if you are actually looking for one. If you just want to study the glTF file format, and you want to study how to make a glTF importer, then you can go ahead and study mine, because mine is not even a full implementation. What I'm doing is I'm importing all of the data, but I'm only processing the geometry data and some of the other data as well, like the name and maybe the transform position and stuff like that. But I'm not importing, for the time being. I'm actually not importing any texture data. I'm not importing any animation data, no skin data, nothing. It's just, well, not nothing. It's mainly only the geometry data. And the reason for that is because I wasn't trying to create a full glTF importer. I was just trying to create a minimalistic, a very small glTF importer that can, at the very least, import the mesh. And so that's what I'm currently working on. But yeah, that being said, I'm gonna end the vlog here. I hope you guys have a nice day, and I will see you in the next vlog. Peace.